Welcome to the first episode of Round the Table, where every week we interview someone doing something interesting in or around the hero world. We'll have people from all sorts of backgrounds talking to me, talking to each other about their work, about certain subjects, etc. I'm pleased for this first episode to have Matthew Winkler, who is a hero's journey expert. He's recorded a TED Ed talk called What Makes a Hero that's had millions of views. From that, he wrote a book, Mentoring Teenage Heroes. You can get from your friendly local Amazon, or I think you can probably get from his website as well. Unfortunately, in this first episode, we've had a technical hitch. Probably hitch is a kind word. Where no video was produced. So got about a 45-minute episode of a great conversation with Matthew about his work, explaining the hero's journey, and really getting into some personal stories about his hero's journey with his son 9 years ago. So please enjoy. Please excuse my mess up on the video for this first episode. Thought about doing it again, but we had a really great conversation. So we're going to go with this. You'll see some images from Matthew's previous talks at Hero Roundtables around the place. And from here, I'll go straight in. Thanks for watching. All right. Matthew, welcome to Round the Table. You are our first ever guest. So I thought first episode makes sense to go to the beginning, begin with the beginning. And for me, the hero's journey was the beginning for me in this field. It was the thing that got me wanting to know more. And so you have sort of positioned yourself as really one of the experts on hero's journey in the world because of your TED video. So let's start there. How did that come about? What is it? And what is it?
So basically, the TED video is called What Makes a Hero. And it was in 2013 when the TED channel decided to have like this sub channel where they would have small animated, bite-sized lessons. And so they sent out a request to all the teachers to submit scripts. And so I was teaching English at a school in Connecticut at the time. And so I sent in this, digested summary of Joseph Campbell's theories about the hero's journey. I was researching it at the time and, it seemed like a good idea. So that was accepted. And then I got paired with this amazing animator, Kirill Uretsky, award-winning, work. And then I got to go down to New York City and go to his studio and record the audio track. And, he and his team put together this amazing, 4-minute clip that is still one of the most popular on the site. I think it's got over 5 million views now. So, I get emails and stuff from teachers all over the world saying, "Oh, use this, it's great." And, sometimes when I go to schools, do my presentation, like, "Oh, you're that guy," so it has, really, been very impactful. And I'm glad that, I was able to share it.
That's really cool when someone makes that connection after the fact that you're there as someone else or for someone else, for something else. And like, oh, hang on, I know you from that other thing. That's really cool. Yeah. And so the talk and your research led to this book, Mentoring Teenage Heroes. Where did that come from? What was the impetus? How did that come into existence?
It's got an interesting story, kind of a crooked path. I homeschooled my son in 6th grade, and he and I did this epic odyssey through all 50 states in America. And that's another story. But then when I sat down to write about it, I really thought, wow, this is a hero's journey. Like, this is, there's a beginning, there's a leaving the comfort zone, there's this, big quest, and then there's this return. So I was like, I gotta leverage that formula. And so I did a lot of research into it, and then the research ended up kind of becoming its own book, which is the book in your hand, where I was completing a Master of Fine Arts program in creative writing at the time, and my mentor in that program said, "Listen, this is its own thing, but you need to interview some people and get two contrasting narratives, and then my story about my son would be a totally different thing, and that's more of a memoir piece." So I did, and I took hours of recorded interviews with Colin, and I forget what name I used in the book, but not her real name.
Yep.
And but real people, real stories about their hero's journey and how it manifested in their lives in that torturous transition from childhood to adulthood. And there's a lot of contrast, boy, girl, kind of positive, negative, and also the fact that reality doesn't typically map onto story structure, right? And sadly, when the curtain falls, it's not over, and you don't live happily ever after. Stuff keeps happening. So, and I try to reveal that, through this book. So, that is how that book, I think it was published in 2016 or 17 by Woodhall Press. It's available on Amazon.
I'll have a link to the book and to the TED Ed talk in the show notes.
Great.
So before we go too far, I think we should really nail down what the hero's journey is and your sort of interpretation of it. So let's start at the beginning. Can you talk us through the steps of the hero's journey?
Yeah. So Joseph Campbell is the name most connected with that phrase, but he actually credits James Joyce as coining the term the monomyth. And that's what kind of inspired Joseph Campbell to dig into, what does he mean by monomyth? What is he talking about? And so he, as a comparative anthropologist, researched all these myths from all over the world, and noticed, their similarities, how, the hero receives this call to go on a quest, on an adventure, typically initially refuses the call, but then finally accepts it, gets some kind of assistance, and then departs from home. And that, threshold is a very symbolic moment in the story. And then, there's some sort of a trial, there's some sort of, tests and travails that take place before entering the cave, right? Before going in to fight the dragon or whatever, and do that thing that the hero most fears. And that's really the turning point. Like that's, in my version, that's kind of 6 o'clock on the dial where, everything pivots there. And at that moment of confrontation, the hero has to win, but in order to win, the hero has to sacrifice something. He can't just come through like, oh, no big deal. You think of Odin losing an eye on the tree of life, or, Christ, dying for 3 days. And then on the other side, whether it's symbolic or literal, the hero emerges from that conflict, from that moment, and gains some treasure, some boon, some reward, and then brings that back to his or her home, and somehow restores, fixes the problem that was there, that was what generated this quest in the first place. And so then that's settled, and the story ends. But it's sort of a new level. Something's transformed. The hero is definitely changed, and the village or the society has also changed. So, so Joseph Campbell, after studying these different myths from all over the world and coming up with this kind of list of, plot points that typically happen in this cycle. And some are missed in some myths, and some are extra ones are added in, or sometimes it's a little reconfigured, but they all kind of echo this same structure. So I think his has like 16 or 17 points, and I've seen as few as 4, and I've seen as many as 113. There's all kinds of people who do different formulas for it, like in Hollywood, in screenwriting, there's lots of books about it. And, George Lucas, credits Campbell with giving him the formula to create his Star Wars storylines. So
it's funny with the number of steps. I had put together a video a lot of years ago with 5 steps that I use when I'm speaking to younger kids, and actually now I use the same model for adults as well. But so many of the comments, more than half of the comments, were something to do with "you got it wrong, idiot," because it's not 5, it's this number or this number or this number, and completely missing the point, because it really is about the sort of 3 phases, and it's just a cyclical kind of set of steps.
I agree, and I'll just put this up real quick. So my version has kind of 12. I just took a clock because I figured everyone knows what a clock looks like, even in the digital age, and with the sort of the threshold line from 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock, and above that is in the home world, and below that is on the adventure, and then 6 o'clock seemed like an obvious point to have everything pivot, and you start and end at the obvious 12 noon. So that's the formula that I just worked with and used in the TED video as well.
Yeah. So who is your go-to fictional character when you have to map this onto someone for helping someone understand it?
I honestly always ask that person that I'm talking to, who's your favorite hero? I do this a lot in groups with schools that I talk to, or writing workshops, and then when they tell me who their hero is, I'm probably going to know it, right? It's we live in the same society, we read the same books, same movies, and then I can kind of unpack it and say, okay, well, what it's Batman, or okay, what was Batman's call to adventure? When did he cross that threshold? What's kind of the turning point, and depending on whether it's and movies and TV shows and serials have different constructions, obviously,
right.
But there's enough plot points that match up that whoever I'm talking to will finally say, oh, I get it, and then it kind of becomes their own.
Yeah,
they're not.
Yeah, that's a great approach. I tried to cover bases. And what was funny, I was using Spider-Man for quite a while, because I think his crossing the threshold is quite a test. It's not the simple stepping across the threshold in Dorothy's house once it's landed in Oz, or it's not Harry Potter running through platform 9 3/4. There's a trial, that beginning trial. But what started happening was the kids would start correcting me because the movies had changed the story in some way. So that first Tobey Maguire Spider-Man was great for it, and I referred to it kind of very specifically. But then the third one of Sam Raimi's trilogy came out, and the guy that killed Uncle Ben didn't actually kill Uncle Ben, and so kids would yell that out. No, that's not what happened. Yeah. And then, of course, it got rebooted again and then again, and so I imagine you probably have some moments where someone gives you a hero that you don't know. So you probably need to ask for someone else at that point.
It does, but honestly, I just wing it. Like I remember I was at a school, and and one of the boys said, so, Goon was the name of this movie. It was a movie about hockey players. He was a hockey player. And I said, okay, wait. So start it off for me. What's his call to adventure? Well, he doesn't know how to skate, but he's going to learn how to skate. And then, he makes it onto the hockey team. And so that's like he crosses the threshold onto the hockey team. And I said, okay, well, what's his nemesis? Like, what's this opposite thing? And they're like, well, there's this really big guy on the other team, and they're both huge. I'm like, oh, okay. So let me guess, the central, the 6 o'clock moment is when they have to face off. And they're like, yeah, how'd you know that was going to happen? It's like right there. And so I pretty much just walked through the rest of the movie for them without even having seen it. I'm like, oh, wait, does he get the girl? Like, yeah, how'd you know he got the girl?
Yeah, I think that it is so fundamental to our experience of the world and stories, this set of steps. And it's those kinds of experiences where someone just starts giving you the answers to the steps without you saying more than one sentence about the step itself. I remember when I first started wanting to teach so fifth graders about the hero's journey, my boss said, no one's going to understand that. That's just not going to happen. And I had complete faith that they would. But man, the sort of depth of understanding so quickly to this new concept was amazing. To even, I start talking to younger kids, so third and second grade, and they completely got it as well. And with adults, it's often that same kind of experience. It's, oh wow, yeah, okay. When
I tell people, they're like, well, how does that work? That just seems, it's just a formula. Just all the screenwriters just copy each other. And I explain, like, no, this is, how do you explain that there's like 119 different versions of Cinderella all over the world? These are stories that conceptually, we've been telling each other around campfires since we were cavemen. And, that commonality in the human experience, it does make sense because, yes, Hollywood turns out, movies according to a formula. Absolutely. And it is always refreshing to see, films that kind of crack that and bust it up a little bit. But you can always kind of, match it up, like Socrates said that, a story has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And ultimately, that's really what this hero's journey is, right?
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that. So I was watching a YouTube story on why King Arthur and Robin Hood fail.
It was Aristotle. It was Aristotle. Go ahead.
King Arthur and Robin Hood for the last 25 years have failed every time someone's tried to make a new film. And I'll put this a link in the show notes. But his point was that people keep missing the point of why these stories have been so loved for so many centuries, and they try to put this new spin on it. So this new Robin Hood film came out, and it was they're trying to reinvent it without putting in the standard pieces that they've had for centuries. The same beats, the same moments, the experiences, the characters that they've all had. And so for 25 years, Hollywood hasn't produced a successful film around these iconic characters. And it was funny, right at the end of this YouTube episode, they said, one of the most successful modern interpretations of King Arthur was in Avalon High, which is a Disney movie from 2005 or something. And so I watched that with my daughter yesterday, and she was fascinated by it. And I was able to do what you were saying before, is make predictions about what was going to happen before it happened. She's like, how did you know that was going to happen? But they did it by following all the same Arthurian tradition, but just changed the setting. So they didn't have to change everything. They didn't have to remove everything, like the Arthur movie that had Keira Knightley as Guinevere as a Pictish warrior. they didn't have to change everything and make Arthur a Roman leader and all this garbage. That's very telling about the power of our stories. When you say there's so many Cinderella versions, we forget that really it's the simple story that we're craving.
And we crave it because it's a reflection of how we see our own lives, right? We apply to college, for example, and go, and that whole thing happens, and then it ends and it's over and something new happens. Everything we endeavor to do is a stretch, a leaving of our comfort zone, and then a struggling through it, and then kind of getting our arms around it, and equilibrium is restored, and that's it. And so we want stories that kind of tell that back to us so that it makes sense to us. I mean, if you're living a life and your day-to-day is completely identical for 10 years in a row, like, you're not having a hero's journey and you're not evolving. Right.
Yeah, I think the other thing that Hollywood keeps getting wrong or historically has gotten wrong, is the idea of the female superhero film not being a viable option. And so for so long, studios just said, no, we're not going to touch that, and we're not going to touch that. And it was finally broken with Wonder Woman. But the reason that I saw they were having this problem is they weren't telling hero stories. They were picking up the sexy, cool villains from other stories and making them the main character of a tentpole film. Like Elektra is a villain. Don't put a movie around her. Catwoman is a villain. Don't put a movie around her. I think there was some pretty bad filmmaking quality around that as well. But if you're not telling the hero's story, people aren't going to resonate with it as much.
I will agree. And, there are some good examples, like Gina Davis in A Long Kiss Goodnight.
Right.
Great. If you ever have a chance, see the movie Hannah with Saoirse Ronan.
Yes.
She's blowing up now. Like, she's the best actress, director. Like, she was in that Irish Brooklyn.
Yep.
But this is when she was a little kid, and it is solid, like, top 10 list movie.
Wow.
It can be done,
Yeah, absolutely. I remember seeing that too, and just
Hunger Games.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll have to have you on another time to break down Hunger Games.
Oh yeah, geek out on movies.
Yeah. That might be a good panel discussion to get a few people on. I think it's so much a key of the Harry Potter success, right? That someone wrote something that was step by step. When I'm breaking that down for kids, I said I think J.K. Rowling may have had the hero's journey list right down beside the first story and just checked each box off, because it's everything that a successful story has.
And in a way, as a writer, in talking to other writers, there's a bit of a resistance, like, I don't want to be stuck in a box. I want to be able to craft my own, narrative formula. It's like, okay, you can, you can definitely bend it. But if you don't reference this, you're doing something very avant-garde, and not everyone's going to get it. That's fine if you want to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've sort of touched on this a couple of times, but I think the powerful part of working around the hero's journey is that application to the real life. Can you talk about the beats of the journey in relation to your cross-country journey with your son, and maybe a bit more intro into what it specifically was?
Yeah, sure. So if you go to 50skatekid.com, you can see the blog and the map and everything. But basically, so my son is now 21, just turned 21. But back when he was in elementary school, he started struggling with reading, and his teachers were like, he's a smart kid, I don't understand what's going on. And we found out, that he had like an eye teaming disorder and also dyslexia, and so he was ended up being pretty far behind, his other classmates in reading. And fourth grade hits, and reading is everything, and fifth grade, and he was just miserable. The school was like a torture chamber for him. So we had to come up with some other solution, and we looked at schools for dyslexic kids, and we looked at different options. But at the same time, he was really passionate about skateboarding, and there was just this one night on a Saturday night after a bottle of wine or something, and he had not finished his report on North Dakota, and he felt terrible about it, and we called him on the carpet about it. He said, "It's so stupid. I'd learn so much more if I just went to North Dakota instead of looking it up in encyclopedias and on the internet and everything." And my wife Jessie said, "Well, maybe you should do that. Maybe you should go skateboarding in North Dakota. Maybe you should go skateboarding in all 50 states." And he's like, "Yeah, right. Like that'll ever happen." And I get choked up about it because like that that moment like changed our lives. So, marched him off to school on Monday, but then this idea kind of snowballed.
So what time of year was that moment?
I think that was in May. No, maybe April. It was in the spring.
Okay.
And Jessie wouldn't let it go. She was like, "Look, he's not happy. This isn't working. We tried tutors. We tried everything. Just go. She said she'd pick up a second job, and I'm a teacher. I can execute the curriculum with him, and so I was really hesitant. Like, this is crazy. Like, okay, it might work. It might fall on its face too. We might end up a year later worse than where we are. I'm not a reading therapist or Orton Gillingham specialist or anything. So so I kind of mapped it out, like what would that look like, how much would it cost, is it really viable, and what are the kind of homeschooling legal logistics ramifications. And and then when I kind of had all my ducks in a row, I went to his teacher and I said, "Listen, we've got this idea." And it was at this meeting with like, for setting him up for next year. And they had said, "Look, if he comes here to the middle school next year for sixth grade, you'll have a special study hall, and you'll have, a coach for the reading, and, we'll work, to make sure he's got everything he needs, all these resources that the district can offer." And they're, great option. And they had done really hard work on it. And I said, "Well, there's this other idea floating around." And his teacher's like, "Oh, I know about the idea." And so I kind of sketched it out for them, and they were all silent. And I thought, "Oh, they're gonna shred me, stupid." And the science teacher was like, "That's amazing! Can I come?" Like, he was like, "I want to do that. I want to do that with my family." And Jessie and I walked out of that room, and we were like, "Oh my God!" Like, we just got this endorsement. I guess we're doing this. So, they helped us out with, some books and curriculum, and we were living in New Hampshire at the time, and they had an online, free, program for homeschool families. So we used that for a couple of the subjects.
So let's pause for a minute. Because I think you've just gone through some of these steps of the hero's journey, right? So I think I don't want to go one by one, but I think that's a good sort of stopping point, because I think you're about to leave the ordinary world.
Yeah.
But you've had these initial...
So like, if you look at it, we had the call to adventure, which is like Jessie, like throwing it down. We had the assistants, the teachers, the existing homeschool website, giving us these things. And then we set off, like we departed. I had a little Honda Fit. We stuffed it full of gear, and we hit the road. And
I think you had a refusal of the call there as well, right?
Yeah, well, true. Yes,
no, this is crazy. We're not going to do this.
Yeah.
And I think that's so common, right? That's Luke Skywalker saying, "No, I've always been dreaming of going into the stars, but no, I can't. I'm not going to do that." Would you say can you talk a little bit about threshold guardians, what they are, and because as you're saying that, I sort of see these teachers as or the school staff as your first sort of they're the guardians of the threshold, whether
For sure.
you know.
Yeah. So, Campbell, I think, coined that term, and he uses it to refer to that moment in the myths where the hero is going into Hades or going into this magical realm, this forbidden place, and there's someone or something guarding that entrance, like Cerberus guarding the gate of Hades, and so on. And in order to cross over, the hero has to overcome that somehow, and it could be a battle, it could be a sop for Cerberus, like it could be a trick, but somehow that's like the first test of the hero's mettle and drive and determination. So and in our real lives, like, we have this all the time. If you're going to start a new job, you have an interview, right? And this panel. If you're gonna enter an educational course, you have to somehow be admitted. So that's why these myths and stories make sense, because these are metaphorical representations of these real world things.
Yeah. So you take off in the Honda Fit, and you've got a route mapped out.
Yeah. We had, we wanted to hit all 50, right? Because that was the whole concept. So we had it sketched out, and the New England was pretty easy because we had family and friends in the Northeast and everything. And then kind of our first trial, like 4:00 on my clock dial, was when we got sort of west of Philadelphia, and we didn't know anybody. But along the way, someone had mentioned this thing called couch surfing, which I will totally plug. I think Airbnb has killed it, because now Airbnb, anyone can, float their couch. This was 2009. So I don't even know if Airbnb was around. But at the time, couch surfing was like a Facebook with a couch, right? So you create a profile, you sign up, and you say, hey, I'm going to be in Pittsburgh on these dates, and I just need a place to crash. And there's people who are like, I'm in Pittsburgh, I've got a couch. And you just, sort of message each of them and say, can we stay? And then they'll message you back and they say, yes. And then you go. Of course, everyone was saying, oh, it could be, they're axe murderers. Who would do that? And so Logan and I had a code word that was, if we go into one of these places and anything seems weird, you just say to me, Dad, I want a snack, right? Or I'll say to you, hey, do you want a snack? And then we'll just go to the car and we'll just drive away. Like, no questions asked. And so, but we, every single one of these people was just an altruist. That's the only thing that was going on. And we actually, we by the time we got to California, we had such kind of a buzz around what we were doing that one of the founders of couchsurfing invited us to his house in Marin County, California. He's like, a .com millionaire, wonderkind. And he was like, why don't you guys come over? And he had, we weren't the only people. It was kind of like a cocktail hour with like a bunch of, his peers who were, building the internet, so it was a very cool experience. And just shows you, what you can do if you just kind of leave it to faith and just take that jump, because we did not have enough. We had a credit card, like that's what we were doing this on. And we certainly weren't going to be able to stay in hotels. We had some camping gear. But the couch surfing not only, saved our budget, but it transformed the experience, because if you think of the difference between spending a year in a foreign country, living with a host family, or spending a year in a foreign country, living inside a hotel, that was the difference. We were in someone's house, they were hosting us, they were taking care of us, they were proud of their community, they were introducing us to all kinds of things. And and we got to see that slice of life in the Great Plains and in, the Rockies, and we it so enriched the experience. I mean, beyond, the curriculum and the, just the tourist stuff that we were doing, to just meet actual people and have those human contact experiences. So
Yeah. So I think one thing that interests me around that is, having talked to you about this before, is that the trip itself changed and started attracting people to your story, right? So can you so halfway through, or whenever it was, people started hearing about you because of the blog, because people talk to each other, etc. What are some of the experiences around that?
yeah, that was great. We got because we were every state we were in, we would hit these skate parks, right? And so we've started off going across the northern edge of the kind of Canadian border, because it was September, October, and we wanted to kind of get those out of the way before the snow fell. And one of those up there, we were in like an indoor skate park, which are so much nicer than outdoor, by the way. Just the smooth ride, and just the perfect copings and everything. So, and there were a couple of photographers there, professional photographers, who had come to shoot some photographs of this new rising star of skateboard. And that's what we're doing. And we told them, and like our car had, we had it wrapped. It was only like $150 to get like 50 Skate Kid, like on both sides, and this giant, logo on the hood, like a Batman thing. And so of course they're gonna ask, right? And we always had the T-shirt on, like we had a bunch of different T-shirts for it. So they asked us about it, and they said, "Wow, that's really cool. You know what? Here's a couple of other names. You should hit up these people on your journey." And so, when we went to like Lincoln, Nebraska, I think was where we talked to the editor of one of like the big. There's only 2 or 3 like skateboard magazines, like the editor. And so he chatted with us, and he did a little thing on their website, and then we got an email from this guy, Dr. Skateboard, who was one of the original manufacturers of skateboards in like the 70s, and he has like he's responsible for like 50% of the skateboards out there. He said, "Hey, you're down in California, why don't you come by my house and we'll hang out?" Okay, great. So things like that kept happening, and then and I would say that was probably like going to see Dr. Skateboard was like that 6 o'clock moment, because we showed up there, at this time and the address, and there was a film guy. We're like, oh, like this, and Dr. Skateboard comes rolling out in this like Willy Wonka style with like a lab coat and a skateboard helmet with like goofy stuff on it, and big old knee pads, and he comes rolling down his front walk to us, and like shakes our hands, and he's like, "Hey, I'm Dr. Skateboard," and Fuel TV, he was friends with some of those guys, and so they took videos of the stuff. So he's like, "Yeah, let's go back to the." So behind his house, he had like this awesome jungle gym, and also a bunch of skateboarding equipment, like a big bowl. And so he and Logan are like skating around the bowl and stuff. And then he says, "I think oh yeah, the pizza's here. I ordered some pizza for lunch." And then this pizza guy rolls over on a skateboard, and Logan is like, "Wait a second, that looks like Mike V." That is Mike V. And so totally blew his mind. Like his head exploded. And so here, like he's skateboarding with Mike Vallely, he's eating pizza with Mike Vallely, and we're all sitting there talking. And then Dr. Skateboard, one of the things he tries to do is he has this Create a Skate program that he tries to put into schools where, he provides a lot of materials at low costs, and it was kind of a shop class experience where kids can take kind of a blank skateboard, which is like a rectangle, but it has the form, and then they can design their own shape, and then using band saws and jigsaws, kind of cut it out, and then they buy some trucks and wheels at the local skate shop, and they just built their own skateboard. So he had a shop in his house, obviously, where Logan and Mike Vallely got to do that, and then and after Mike V finished his making his brand new skateboard. He was like, "Hey, can you sign this for me?" And Logan was like, "Oh my God, you're asking me to sign your skateboard?" So, that was huge. And then when we left there at the end of the day, he was on fire. Like he was a kid who felt like he was the worst in his class, like the dumbest kid in the school. And like when he walked out of there, he was like, "That was the greatest day of my life." And I realized, it's not all about the academics. It's not all about the curriculum. It's about, the confidence and believing in yourself. And so many of the education professionals I talk to about it, who teach dyslexic students, they say that's what it is. It's like it comes down to confidence. If you don't have the confidence, all the Orton Gillingham in the world isn't going to do it for you.
Right. So with the hero's journey? It's cyclical, and I think you mentioned that before. You finish, and then you're going to be drawn into another one, and on and on. And the important part of the end of this hero's journey is the boon or the gift, the knowledge, the learning. So what were some of the outcomes? This is 9 years ago.
Yeah.
So what's changed? What impact did that have on both of you at that time, but also how did it impact future journeys and challenges?
A big impact, So we finished that, and he came back, and we came home, and we actually moved to New York State, and he went to a school there, public school, 7th grade, and he got on the B honor roll his first semester. It's like, what? That was just unthinkable, the year before. So, and that was for me, that was like very validating, right? Because I was terrified, like, okay, I did my best, but now we're going to see, how that measures up in, the real world. And for him to bring that report card home, I thought, okay, I didn't destroy his life. Okay, and I think that in the long term, he hasn't been like, a straight A student after that. He had, ups and downs, and, reading and writing, still not his favorite things to do. But the long-term benefit of it was that he had this faith in himself, that he had value, and that he had purpose, and that he could accomplish what he wanted to accomplish. I mean, anything, the craziest thing that he wanted to do, he could do. And so, as an educator, I firmly believe, that you have to have a student-centered curriculum. Like you have to figure out what lights the fire for this particular kid, and then throw gasoline on that. And so, as a dad and with his mom, we just tried to figure that out. And eventually in high school, he was like, "Oh, I love cars," and so we went to these auto shows where it's like, we're like, well, maybe, you could be an engineer or something and design cars. And so we kind of looked into that, and, the math wasn't really his bag, but, the visual and the aesthetic piece really was. And so found out there's this program called industrial design, which is a really rare kind of major at there's only a handful of colleges in the States that even offer it. But we went to visit some of those, and, and he was doing art classes and, doing really well in those. And so that's the path he ended up going on. And, he's finished 2 years of the program that he's at right now at the Shintaro Akatsu School of Design at the University of Bridgeport. And, I believe he'll finish the other two and graduate and, go and become an industrial designer. And if he had just gone to the public school 6th grade and, just been demoralized every time he got on the bus, I don't know what he'd be doing. Honestly, when I look at having researched a lot about, dyslexia and dyslexic people, you probably heard, the statistics about about 10% of the population of the planet is dyslexic. but it's a much greater percentage of millionaires and entrepreneurs are dyslexic.
Yeah.
But also a much larger percentage of the prison population is dyslexic. So if you're dyslexic, it's kind of win big or lose big. You know, I'm dramatizing, but I think we got him on the right side of that.
Yeah. So I want to finish up. I think what I want to impart to anyone watching and listening is how much easier it is these days to take these adventures and deliberately put yourself on a hero's journey. So 9 years ago, that it was a pretty scary prospect to do that, and couch surfing really helped you then, and can still help people now. And the blog and certainly social media and wrapping your car and t-shirts, and I would encourage anyone who has got that crazy idea to do it, to jump into it and do it, because when you are projecting to the world that you're on an amazing adventure, people turn up and they want to help. They're attracted to that idea. They want to support you. And I think today we were talking before the show about Patreon, and that's where you're probably, or quite possibly, watching this at the Hero Roundtable Patreon. There are ways now that adventure can be supported by someone who can't physically get to you. So if someone wants to give $2 a month or $20 a month, if you're on that journey, people gravitate to it and they want to help. And $2 a month to help someone skate in every state, or someone visit 100 castles in a year across Europe, or something like that, people are going to gravitate to that. And technology and the web is really helping us make these kinds of adventures easier.
Yeah, we were on a bus in Seattle, and we just had our t-shirts on, and we were taking a bus to the airport, and and then this girl walks over to us, and I'd seen her like messing with her phone. She said, I just looked you up on your website because it's on the shirt, and I just bought one of your t-shirts. Rock on. And she walked out.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that just happened. But when we were at skate parks and there's other kids there, and moms and dads, and they would ask us what we're doing, and I'd tell them, like, a lot of times the moms would just start crying.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That we would be so committed, to his dream. And the dads would just be like, that's the coolest thing I've ever heard. And we tried to sell a t-shirt, like, here's a t-shirt, $10, But you're right. I mean, you're absolutely right that people want to participate. They want to say, I'm a part of this. This is awesome. And I'm a member. I'm going to wear this t-shirt tomorrow, and I'm going to tell people how awesome this is. And I hope that, some of them went on, like, a year or two later or whenever, and just say, you know what, my kid is like crazy about this, and it's crazy, but it's not as crazy as what those guys did, so let's just do it.
Absolutely. And it's the same thing we were talking about with the hero's journey in stories and films, is where we're attracted to the hero's journey because it describes our story. They inspire us to want more out of our lives. And I think what you did on that specific journey, what you do with your book, is that inspire people to say, yeah, look, I can do this. I can try something. And it could be for a week, it could be for a year, it could be unending, no specific finishing point. So I think that's such an important thing that you're doing and that you did. And Matthew, if people want to ask you more questions about that or about other things, how do they get you? What's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can totally connect with me anytime. Shoot me an email, Twitter, whatever.
What's your Twitter handle?
Matthew P. Winkler.
Okay.
So it's like,
right. Yeah. And MatthewPWinkler.com if you're listening to this on the podcast.
Right.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for coming on. Thank you for being the first guest, and we'll see you in Australia, March 2nd and 3rd at the Hero Roundtable in Yarram. Very excited for that. Is that your 4th or 5th? That'll be your 5th?
I think it might be the 5th.
Yeah.
I haven't been counting.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again. We'll see you then. And thanks
I'm
for
looking
being
forward
here.
to it.
Great.
Thanks for the invitation. Thanks for having me on, and looking forward to Australia.